Hello, I'm Samaya, and on this channel we binge films, TV shows, and books, and then yap about them. Wow! In this series, we'll be covering and analyzing every single Best Picture winner in Oscar history and doing what apparently the voting members weren't doing. We will be watching every single nominated picture in Oscar history and deciding, did the winner really deserve that winner spot? Today we'll be covering the 1932 winner, CIMARRON, or as they say in the movie, CIMARRON. It is a Spanish word though, so you actually are supposed to say it like CIMARRON, but they say CIMARRON. So that's what we'll call this movie in this video. I'll be discussing the other nominees as well, and by the end of this video, we'll answer the question, did CIMARRON really deserve to be the winner? Just as a reminder, there are no strict voting rules for actual voting members, so I created my own. I'll be using this rubric and rating the movie based on each category from 1 to 5, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. I'll then add up the number and divide that number by 5 to get a general 5-star rating. And if I feel that the total is either too generous or not generous enough, based off of how I feel about the movie, I would either raise or lower it. Because ultimately, we rate movies based on the emotional impact, and the emotional baseline can be different for each person. But if you just want to hear about the winner, that's okay, baby girl. Please fast forward to the timestamp that'll be on the screen. Lynne. Lynne was released in 1931, starring Anne Harding as Lady Isabella, Conrad Nigel as Robert Carlyle, Clive Brooke as Captain William, Beryl Mercer as Joyce, and Cecilia Loftus as Cornelia Carlyle. It was directed by Frank Lloyd and released by Fox. Lynne is a crime and drama film about a young married woman who is accused of cheating on her well-off husband. As a social outcast and divorcee, the woman endures extreme hardship, all the while longing to see her son again. For the literary element, I rated this a 4. For the directing element, a 3. For the visual element, a 3. For the editing element, a 4. The sound element, a 4. So for the final rating, I gave it a 3.6, but let's give it a 3-star. I enjoyed this movie. Fun fact, actually, so this movie is kind of hard to find to watch, or used to be. I was lucky enough to find it off of YouTube. I'm not gonna say the person just in case if they try to take their video down, but they even still had to go to UCLA, where that is the only cut available to watch in the world, and got the last 10 minutes of the film that has been lost. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of it, because I felt so bad for the wife. Like, seriously, so bad. The stuff she went through was absolutely bonkers. She was accused of cheating on her husband because this dude could not, like, keep her hands off of her. The sister told her brother that, yeah, I saw your wife cheating with this guy, blah, blah, blah. He went to her room, blah, 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 blah. And so the brother believed his sister. The wife was like fed up. Like, she was like, you know what? I'm leaving and I'm taking my child with me. She packs her bag really fast, goes to try to grab her child, and lo and behold, the husband comes out the room and was like, you're not taking my kid. And she's like, huh? Like, what? That's my baby. I grew him. You just had a nut and left. He slammed the door in her face, and she ended up leaving without her child. It was just a whole mess. Long story short, she ended up going blind. She was able to see her son before she went blind. It was just really sad, you know? I hated the sister. I just think, even in real life, and it goes to show, even back then, it was like this. When a family member gets too involved in your love life, it never ends well. It never ends well. Like, are you dating the family or are you dating the person? So all the terrible stuff happened, right? But this wife still had a really good relationship with her father. And yet, her father didn't do squat. He didn't do nothing. Matter of fact, we don't even know what happened to him. Now that I think about it, because she got him to come to Paris so that way she could convince him, please, can you just at least go see my child and let me know how he is, blah, blah, blah. The father never returns. We actually never see him or hear about him again. Oh my gosh, talking about that is such a big plot hole. I just think it was kind of crazy. The ending, which I'm gonna spoil. She goes blind, right? And while she's walking away, because the husband caught her in the house, and he's like, get out. And so she leaves blind, tries to find her way to the road, ends up falling off a cliff and dying. A lot of thoughts are going in my brain as an actress, as a writer. This ending was crap. Like, it made no sense. She was the wife of that estate for a couple of years. That means, like, she was able to walk around the grounds and, like, explore. So she knew there were cliffs and potential dangerous areas around the house. So why would you leave and you can't see and you fall off a cliff and die? Yeah. So would I recommend this movie? Sure. The Front Page. The Front Page was released in 1931, starring Pat O'Brien as Hildy, Adolphe Menjot as Walter Burns, and Mary Bryan as Peggy Grant. It was directed by Louis Milestone and released by the Caddo Company. The Front Page is a comedy, drama, crime, and romance film about an investigative reporter looking to earn better pay. So when an accused murderer escapes custody, he does his best to find the criminal, only that the story is far more complicated than he imagined. For the literary element, I rated this a 3. For the directing element, a 3. For the visual element, a 3. For the editing element, a 4. For the sound element, a 3. So my final rating was technically a 3.2, but personally, I would give this a 2-star. Guys, if I'm being so honest, I really couldn't get into this movie. If you like this movie, I apologize personally. I'm sorry. I literally tried to watch this movie twice. Both times I kept falling asleep. Both times I was confused. I was like, wait, who is this? What's their name? What is going on? My head was scrambled. I don't know her. It just was not my cup of tea. It was not. I was like, this is a really bad movie. My issue was there was just too many ensemble characters, like too many. The opening credits had a good 10 to 15 people introduced. I'm like, how am I supposed to remember all these names? Everybody kind of looks the same. To me, it was just boring. Can't say much about it. So would I recommend this movie? No, not really. Skippy. Skippy was released in 1931, starring Jackie Cooper as Skippy and Robert Coogan as Suki. It was directed by Norman Taurog and released by Paramount. Skippy is a family comedy and drama film about a troublesome young boy from a wealthy family meeting another young boy from the poor side of town. Together, through adventures around the town, the pair strengthen their bond. For the literary element, I give this a 3. For the directing element, a 4. For the visual element, a 3. For the editing element, a 4. And for the sound element, a 4. So my final rating was 3.6, but let's give it 3 stars. So this movie was funny as especially the ending. Oh my gosh. You just have to watch it. However, the father, his arc, not gonna lie, very unrealistic. He was a stubborn father, basically really strict towards Skippy, and he did not like poor people. He thought that they were dirty. But then after seeing his son cry about a situation he didn't even really understand or know about, he ended up making amends with the poor side of town and saving everyone over there. It was just very unrealistic and out of character. But then again, this is a kids movie. Like, that's how kids think. They don't think in gray terms. It's black or white. Either you're a good guy or a bad guy. And the flip is like this, for like instant for them. I can't snap, by the way. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how to snap, please. But yeah, you can tell that this was like written in a way where everything was kind of thought of through the point of view of a child. So yeah, of course, you know, some things are just gonna be too fast or too simple because it's a kids movie. What can you expect? Even though it was a kids movie, I must say, kids movies, they be having me sobbing. And this movie was not an exception. I was sobbing when, spoiler alert, the dog died. I literally had to collect myself, pause it, and collect myself. I was like, why would they shoot the dog? They didn't shoot him on camera. It was just so sad. And the way Suki's actor was crying, these kids, they did their big one in those scenes. Fun fact, Skippy's actor Jackie actually got nominated for Best Actor that year. After watching the other movies, he should have won, because we're gonna get into that in a second. Would I recommend this movie? Yeah, I think it's super cute. Trader Horn. Trader Horn was released in 1931, starring Harry Carey as Trader Horn, Edwina Booth as Nina Trent, and Duncan Ronaldo as Peru. It was directed by W.S. Van Dyke and released by MGM. Trader Horn is an adventure, action, and racist film about two white men trying to receive their dead missionary friend's lost daughter in Africa. For the literary element, I rated this a 1. For the directing element, I rated it a 1. For the visual element, a 2. For the editing element, a 2. For the sound element, I guess a 3. So I gave it a 1.8 star technically, but let's give it a half star. I'd go lower if I could. I couldn't finish this movie. I'm being so straight up. I watched maybe like 20 minutes of it. This movie, as a nominee, and the fact that it's preserved to where you can watch it on multiple platforms. This is a disgrace to the Oscar name. Seriously, not exaggerating. It's completely and utterly racist as fuck, stupid as fuck, weird as fuck. And it's just about racist tropes about African people. Yeah, it's just weird. It's so weird. Seriously. Like, it's weird. I'm sorry, guys. I'm struggling to even really, like, politely put this movie into words. It honestly doesn't even deserve to be talked about. So let me make this quick. So basically, the plot was that two white men were trying to save the daughter of a missionary that was killed by African tribes, and they're trying to save her daughter from this particularly savage tribe.
Huh?
And apparently this white woman was treated as a goddess and worshipped by the tribe. And you should see the marketing for this movie too. It's marketed as the angriest woman in Africa or something like that. Something stinks. Like, ew. This movie. It was just weird. It's just weird. It was such a hard watch to even watch those 20-30 minutes. I just had to turn it off. Like, I'm getting a headache talking about it. Also, I was shocked because the African women's boobs were just straight up out there multiple times in the first 20-30 minutes. I didn't even finish this, so I don't even know what else was shown. I mean, what's crazy is that the white woman, she was pretty much naked too, but her boobs were covered. It made me feel like they were treating the African woman not as a woman on screen who deserves the decency to be covered. It was like they were treated as spectacles and almost like animals. Just seeing that, I was wondering what it was rated, which we will talk about later as well, because there was actually no rating system during this era. Would I recommend this movie? No. And I honestly think it should be erased from existence. CIMARRON. CIMARRON is a Western and drama film released in 1931, starring Richard Dix as Yancey and Irene Dunne as Sabra Cravat. It was directed by Wesley Ruggles and released by RKO Radio. So this was actually the first Western to win the Best Picture category. And another one won't win again until like 50 years later in the 1990s. It was also the first film in general to be nominated for every major Academy Award. Okay, so let's get into the summary. The film begins in 1889, where the Oklahoma land rush is happening. Thousands of settlers run across the fields, seeking to mark the stolen land as their own. We follow Yancey Cravat, attempting to mark his land, only to be tricked by a woman named Dixie, who beats him to it, marking the plot as her own. Yancey goes home to his wife, Sabra, who sits with her obviously wealthy family. A servant boy named Isaiah hangs from the chandelier, fanning the family, listening to the conversations happening around him. Yancey informs the family of what happened to the plot of land he almost claimed, and is met by a lecture from Sabra's mother, who reveals that Yancey had been away from his wife and child for over a month at this point, a trend that never stops throughout this film. After the lecture, Yancey still expresses that he will move to the new lands and that he's taking Sabra and their child Sim, short for Cimarron, with him. The couple leave for the new lands, stopping to rest during the night. And while looking for a rug to cover the ground, Yancey finds that Isaiah has snuck into their carriage and wants to come with them as their servant boy. The couple agrees and continue on their journey. They make it to the early settlement of Osage, buying a home and starting a newspaper business. The settlement is essentially a lawless town in the beginning, and due to Yancey's superiority complex, he feels he must be part of ridding the town of criminals and establishing it as a respectable town. And so he kills a gang member leader during the town's first church meeting, of which he was asked to be the preacher of. Literally, he grabbed his gun and from the stage in front of everybody. The gang leader had been bullying other town members, and he was also harassing anyone who didn't agree with him or even just looked at him funny. He had issues. Yancey also believed that the gang member was the person who murdered one of his friends prior to the land rush, so he had personal beef with him, and him already messing with the town was not helping things. The church meeting ends abruptly after a man was murdered, and the town continues on with their lives. It's now 1890, and there's a new addition to the Yancey family, a healthy baby girl named Donna. Yancey and Sabra are now established members of the town, Yancey for his leadership and Sabra for her girls club. The seemingly perfect day of talking about the beauty of their child, the latest wallpaper in their living room, and the success of the newspaper business is interrupted by an outlaw gang taking the town by storm, shooting everything and everyone in sight. Yancey joins the fight, killing most of the members, specifically one he knew and was friends with, ending their attack. But during the shootout, Isaiah attempts to rescue Sim, who was stuck outside with his native friend, Ruby, daughter of a chief. Isaiah spots the pair behind some wood, rushing towards them in the open, and is shot. His dead body is later found by a town member and brought to Yancey. It's 1893 now, and Yancey is informed that more land has been bought by the government and another, bigger land rush is to happen. Yancey wants to leave as soon as possible and pressures Sabra to join them. Sabra refuses. After all, she made a life in Osage that she did not want to give up and have to start over again someplace else. And so Yancey leaves her and the kids with the promises of, "I'll send someone for you," leaving his mouth over and over as he rides with his boys to new land. It's now 1898, several years later, and no word has been sent to Sabra about Yancey. She takes his place as editor in the newspaper, still using his name though. Rumors about her husband and the Dixie woman have spread throughout the town, claiming that Yancey sent money to Dixie for her new house. Sabra's jealousy and animosity towards women is at its peak, especially since her and the townswomen have gotten the law involved, placing Dixie on trial for public indecency. Because, there's also rumors that she's P-word. But during breakfast with her now older children, Sabra is shocked by Yancey's sudden return. Yancey hears about Dixie's trial and deems himself as her lawyer. Yancey wins the trial and reveals the truth about Dixie's sad past to Sabra, who accepts the explanation without much questioning and rids herself of her prejudice against Dixie. Even more years pass, and it's now 1906. Sabra argues with her bratty daughter while seaming her school dress. Her son, Sim, enters the room and announces his love for his childhood native friend Ruby and that he will marry her. Sabra strongly rejects him doing this, but stops once Sim says that Yancey approves of their marriage. The couple later argue over Yancey's desire to publish about native rights in the newspaper. Sabra once again strongly disagrees and informs Yancey he'll be throwing away any chance of him becoming a prominent figure. Yancey ends the argument saying he will publish the article since it's his name that's the editor, not hers, despite Sabra keeping the newspaper alive while he was absent for years and years and years without word. Yancey goes on to say she'll be glad that he advocated for native rights in the future. It's now 1929, and Sabra still acts as the editor of the newspaper under Yancey's name, who has been absent from her life with no word again for many years at this point. She reminisces with her friend, who is also the printer of the newspaper, and she asks him to reprint the native rights article, seemingly now at peace with and proud of Yancey's point of view. Sabra is invited to join Congress, where her children and other friends attend her initiation ceremony, but Yancy stays notably absent. During a business trip, she visits a new part of town being built and overhears a worker calling for an ambulance. She interrogates the worker and finds out that someone nicknamed Old Yance had been severely hurt after shielding a torpedo with his body, protecting everyone around him in the process. Sabra recognizes the nickname and runs to the worksite, where she falls to her knees and sees Yancy dying on the ground. She holds him until his last breath. The movie ends with the statue of Yancy being unveiled to the sound of celebratory trumpets. Okay, so for the literary element, I rated it a 3. Just to establish, this movie is not based on a true story. Yancy, Sabra, they're not real people. But this is a movie rooted in real life events, like the Oklahoma land rush of 1889. Just wanted to establish that first and foremost. So let's unpack this movie. Let's start with the kind of easy one. I'm being sarcastic. Yancy. I don't know if it's Yancy. My A's are really weird. I'm from Chicago. Can't help it. Sorry. Let's talk about his white savior complex and white man's burden complex. Yeah, so I would definitely categorize this movie as a white savior movie. It is quite a hard watch, to say the least. Everybody depended on Yancy. He was the moral compass of the movie and of everyone. He could never say anything wrong. He can never be wrong. That's how the movie set up his character. So yeah, it becomes extremely problematic when 1, the story is rooted in real life events, and 2, the character is white, and 3, he just happens to constantly be the one advocating for people of color, but yet benefiting from the system that oppresses said people of color. I will say though, I was surprised that he did advocate for Native rights, especially after watching Trader Horn. I was like, okay, I'm prepared for the worst. During the church scene, he was asking for donations to build a new church, because they had to have the church session in a gambling building. And he was like, everyone could donate except for the natives, because they shouldn't donate to those who stole the land that was their birthright. And I was like, oh wow, we're acknowledging that? In 1931? I was shooketh. And yet, here you are, building a new life on their stolen land. I said what I said. Still, it was progressive for the time, I guess. But at the same time, actions speak louder than words. I also thought it was kind of weird how, he tamed Sabra and the other women about their malice towards Dixie. And the fact that he probably gave Dixie money was never, talked about between him and Sabra. And instead of, understanding and acknowledging his wife's insecurities and questions about their relationship, he kind of shied away from that hard conversation with Sabra by talking about Dixie's traumas and stuff and saying this is what actually happened, blah, blah, blah. It just felt like a deflection. But the movie framed it as see, he's right. Listen to him. Stop being ridiculous. His moral compass is better than yours. It was just left a weird taste in my mouth. But moving on, let's talk about Sabra in general. I was actually pleasantly surprised too by Sabra and her ambition in the film and how they framed it. They showed her literally being a businesswoman while her husband was absent for years at a time. I thought she would have been a really cool character if she wasn't racist. Because every chance she got, the slurs she would call the Native people, the things she would say about them, unwarranted. So I ultimately did not care for her either. But yeah, that leads me into my next thing that I want to talk about is Ruby and CIMARRON, their marriage and all that jazz. I also thought that was kind of shocking to show the 1930s, a marriage between a white man and a Native American, essentially an interracial marriage, and it being framed as okay. Obviously, the mother was not okay with it, but once again, it ties back to Yancy and how he was the first one okay with it. It's once again putting him on a pedestal for things that are honestly the bare minimum. Let's start there. Human compassion is bare minimum. Why are we praising someone for being normal? So for the directing element, I give this movie a 3. Let's dive into Isaiah. Well, let's dive into several characters. Let's dive into Isaiah. Let's dive into the stutter character. The reason why I'm choosing to do this in the directing segment is because the director could have chose a different route of how to frame these characters and their stories, and yet he chose not to. Let's start with Isaiah. So Isaiah was the typical steppin' fetchin' caricature. When I was doing my research, I came across that term. This caricature was created by Lincoln Theodore Monroe Andrew Perry, otherwise known as Steppin' Fetchit. He was an African-American actor with Caribbean descent, so he was Jamaican and from the Bahamas. He was considered to be one of the greatest screen comedians of the 1920s, the 1930s era. His act, though, was the trickster. So basically, he was outwitting the oppressors by pretending to be slow and lazy and exploiting the oppressor's sense of superiority to get what he wants. He would do a lot of like shuffling, mumbling, slacking, and dozing off. He would have heavy eyelids and a loose lower lip, and he would scratch his head during conversations to make himself seem like dumb and like, I don't understand what you're saying. Lincoln was actually the first African-American actor millionaire. He was signed to an agency, which was unheard of at the time. He was strongly criticized during the civil rights era, and rightfully so, because he did push a lot of like negative stereotypes about Black people, because, you know, people truly believe that film was a documentation of life. So people really thought Black people acted like that. But later on, he was praised for actually opening doors for a lot of Black actors, and he received the NAACP Special Image Award, and he was elected to the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame in 1978. But yeah, Isaiah's character was pretty much like Steppin'. He would speak really slow, be clumsy, and things didn't really click in his head. And another scene of him wearing oversized clothes, trying to go to church with everybody. The whole town makes fun of him. Beyonce praises him for his loyalty. Ew. And then we have the stutter character, Jesse Rickey. So he is the printer of the newspaper. He would stutter a lot, and people would walk away from him while he was speaking. They would just treat him as a joke. What's crazy when I did my research was the actor Roscoe Addis. He actually had a speech impediment until he was 18. So I can't imagine playing this character knowing that you're kind of like gonna be used as the butt of the joke. I don't know, it saddened me. Both of these characters were used as comedic relief, but nothing was funny. Nothing was funny. It was just sad watching them being ignored, being used, being laughed at by the town. Both of them, their feelings were just ignored. But Isaiah in particular, he was portrayed as someone who was happy to come along and didn't care about what he left behind. Jesse would have his moments of like, with his face, like you could tell he was angry. So I would say they were kind of pushing more empathy for the stutter character over Isaiah, which was weird though in general. And hear me out, stick with me, because I personally did not find these moments funny, but I could see how the movie was like setting it up to be funny, right? So they were trying to make you laugh at these characters. It asks the audience to sit and accept and even entertain these stereotypes, right? But yet, when something happened to them or was said to them, it asked you for sympathy and understanding. In a way, it humanized these stereotypes. In my opinion, that's odd because it's further pushing the narrative that these stereotypes represent real life people. But no, these stereotypes do not. They don't represent real life people and their layers. So to ask to sympathize with these like one-dimensional portrayals comes across as reinforcing that these tropes are true. Does that make sense? That's why like I think it's just so important as writers and filmmakers, creators. It's really, really important that we take the responsibility of portraying people seriously, because people get confused easily with film and real life. They see film as a depiction of real life. So when you push these stereotypes, you push out these narratives, especially about a certain group of people, eventually people who never met those type of people or aren't really familiar with their culture will think that this stuff is true. It's just a whole conversation, guys. And if you want me to do a video about this topic, I would be more than happy to do it. I love like debating stuff like this. For the visual element, I gave this movie a 3. The beginning land rush shoot actually took a whole week to film. A whole week. And it had 5,000 extras, 28 cameramen, and 6 still photographers, and 27 camera assistants. This was like a big shoot. It was good, but it lasted far too long, in my opinion. For the editing element, I gave this movie a 4. I mean, nothing much to really say about the editing. For the sound element, I gave this movie a 4. Yeah, nothing much to say about the sound. I mean, it was crisp audio and sound effects for the time. For the final rating for the movie, I gave it a 3.4 technically, but I want to give it 1 star. So would I recommend this movie? Obviously, you cannot change history, but we can control how we portray the people of that time and the narrative we're pushing in a film. I was curious about the public's reaction to this movie during that era because, not gonna lie, despite all the problematic stuff we just talked about, back then, this was probably considered a very woke movie. So I did some research and it turns out this movie was actually a pre-code movie. I'm gonna give a quick production code administration lesson here. So if you don't want to hear that, go ahead and skip to this time code so you can hear my final thoughts about everything. So let's get into the eras of what the production code administration was. We have the pre-code era, which lasted from 1930 to 1934, which was basically where it was like weekly enforced. Then we have Breen's administration era, which is from 1934 to 1954. This is when Joseph Breen was put in charge and it was strict enforcement. Everyone had to get a seal of approval prior to release of their film, or theaters won't show their film. Then we have the third era, the decline, which lasted from 1954 to 1968. This was basically when the enforcement was not as strict and directors began to push boundaries a little bit more. Eventually, in 1968, the entire production code administration system was replaced by the Motion Picture Association of America rating system, which is what we know today as G, PG, R, etc. So there's a whole list the production code administration had for films. Sexual content. There could be no nudity, suggestive dancing, scenes, or lustful kissing. Profanity. No curse words. And don't put God's name in vain. Crime. Do not show criminals getting away without punishment. Don't show how to commit crime. And the police must be respected. Violence. There should be no gore or sadistical acts. Drugs/alcohol. No drugs at all, period. And the alcohol must not be glorified. Religion. Don't mock religion. Marriage and family. Adultery should not be shown as acceptable. There should be no homosexual content, and divorce should be portrayed as sad or wrong. Racial portrayals. Avoid offending foreign nations, but really avoid any racism topics that make white people look bad. Like I mentioned before, CIMARRON was actually made during the pre-code era, and proof of that is Ruby and CIMARRON's marriage, as well as there are some sexual paintings of women in the background. Let's answer the question, did CIMARRON deserve the winning title? No. Honestly, I don't think anyone deserved to win the award that year. But if I had to choose, I think it should have been either Skippy or Lynne. I think CIMARRON won because, well, maybe the Academy wanted to praise the effort of being politically correct back then. Also, I would say this is more of a factor that the movie had an insane budget. So much so that they were barely able to afford the music for the film. The opening land rush sequence that I mentioned earlier was so technically complicated. Technically, it was more cinematically creative than the others, which is why the Oscars were made in the first place, to push for these filmmakers to make better quality films. Thank you guys so much for watching. Obviously, I knew going into this series we'd be watching some films that did not age well, considering the era of America at that time. But I don't know. I was just thoroughly disappointed in this year's winner and nominees, because also all of them had a trend of showing harm towards Black people in some way, shape, or form. Like in CIMARRON, Isaiah Died. In Skippy, they had a little Black boy in the poor side of town. They showed a saw almost going through his head. And then Trader Horn, must I say more? So yeah, I just felt weird after watching this year's nominees and winners, if I'm being so for real. So I just hope it gets better from here.
God, please! God, please! God, please!
I also just wanted to give you guys a heads up that instead of 5 movies per week, we'll be watching 8 movies at a time until we get to the 1945 Oscars. So the video from now on may be slightly delayed and or longer, just because I still work during the week and I have to make time to watch all these movies and make sure I'm doing my research properly and edit and film and edit. But I don't know, I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and I'm hoping you guys are having a lot of fun watching me and hearing me talk about these movies. Also, I have a new series planned out for you guys coming up really soon, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, feel free to join the Oscars challenge and share your thoughts about the nominees and Best Picture winner this year in the comments below. I really want to hear you guys' thoughts. Next time, we'll be watching Grand Hotel. That's a wrap. Until next time, bye!
What the dog doing?